Laura, welcome to Women Seeking Wholeness.
Thanks for having me, Sheree. It's great to be here.
I can already tell this is going to be right up my alley. I don't personally know you, but having read your expertise, where you've niched in, which is all about, the higher way of healing a marriage. You could say relationships in general, and just some of the talking points you sent over to me. I'm like, wow, this lady is totally speaking my language about the deeper ways to integrate and heal a marriage relationship. So let's talk about, first of all, my listeners know, and I told you this, but my listeners know that I almost got divorced. Well, I filed for divorce twice since 2018. The first time we didn't separate, it was a quick reconciliation, very painful at first, but we reconciled. And then, a year and a half later, we hadn't gone deep enough in our healing. And I shared this with you, but we actually met with a marriage therapist who pretty much put the nail in the coffin in terms of us separating again and ultimately getting a hair's breadth from divorce. I mean, we were 10 months separated, ready to sign the papers. It was literally like divine something to bring us back into the space of healing our inner childs with each other. But this therapist, initially I thought, oh, she's really helped us. And then it became, as we unpacked later some of the advice, it was actually what separated us. So I know that you and I kind of share that belief about how damaging marriage therapy can be. But before we get into that, that's just the backstory and context for me and why I was so interested in interviewing you. And I'm so glad that you came to me to do this interview, because it's divinely aligned and divinely timed right now. A lot of people are suffering in their marriages.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what brought you to this work?
Well, I was suffering in my marriage. I never set out to be a relationship expert. I was just trying to fix my own marriage, which we'd been married maybe 6, 7, 8 years when I thought, oh my gosh, I think I married the wrong guy. I just thought such a loser pants. I told him he needed to make more money and he just wasn't. And then he quit his job. So he wasn't making any money. And I was I thought, I'm just going to tell him how he can be more ambitious and how he can be a little tidier and how he can be more romantic. And I was doing all that like any good wife should, right? I thought. And he was so distant. Like I would try to talk to him. He would just be like turning up the volume on the TV. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to take him to marriage counseling. The marriage counselor is going to fix him. And then I can finally be happy.
So how long were you married at that point?
Oh, like I think we started counseling around 8 years and we went for over a year. We spent $9,000, and this was a long time ago, on marriage counseling. And of course she didn't fix him, and that I didn't become more happy. That's not how it works, right? That's not how any of this works. And I remember I was sitting on the marriage counselor's, slate gray couch, and I realized like this is not working. I'm going to have to either get divorced or I'm going to spend the rest of my life in a loveless marriage. And I just thought of those options. I'm going to have to get divorced. That was what made sense to me. So I decided I would get divorced too. Mm-hmm. And the only problem was I was too embarrassed to get divorced. So as a last ditch effort, I started asking.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh and giggle about that, but like, it is so funny how we put other people's opinions and perceptions.
That's right.
The forefront versus doing what it takes to set the boundaries in ourselves and like I deserve love and all of that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I was very convinced it was him. Like even the counselor agreed like I was the good, wife and he was the bad husband. And so anyway, so I started asking these women who'd been married for what seemed like an eternity. It was 15 years at the time. I thought, okay, you made it 15 years. You must know something. And they started saying things that didn't even make sense to me. I didn't even really understand what they meant. But I was so desperate. I thought, I'm just going to experiment with everything they say. I'll try it. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, I'll just throw it out. And I started experimenting. And I remember it was not even that long after that. I mean, in my house, it was wall to wall hostility, or there were cold wars where we just didn't speak at all, but it was really tense. And I was starting these experiments, and I walked through the door one time, and my husband's face lit up. He was happy to see me again. So I thought, okay, this is working. So then I knew what to do. And it wasn't hard, but it was very new. It was totally different. My parents are divorced. So I realized looking back, like, oh, I had a failed recipe I was following there. And so I knew what to do to make my marriage like fun again, not just like, okay, at least we're not getting divorced, but like it was getting like playful, and the passion, he was making bedroom eyes at me again and stuff. But I couldn't get myself to do it. I remember we were driving down the street one time, we were having this big fight in the car again. And I'd been so hopeful that that wasn't going to happen, and it was happening again. And I wanted to have a great marriage so badly. So I thought, okay, I'm going to recruit some other people to do this stuff with me. And I started a little support circle. There were 5 of us. And it was crazy because we started doing the things that I had learned about, and everyone was reporting miracles. This one woman said, oh, my husband won the sales contest at work, and he took us on the most romantic getaway of our lives. And they had been struggling, right? And then another one said, she's like, it's not going to sound like much, but my husband got up and painted the family room. We've been arguing about that for months. And today he's like, I'm going to paint the family room. And he did. So we knew we were onto something. And someone said, hey, can you write this down for my cousin in Florida? I was like, sure, I'll do that. And that became my first book, which Dateline did an expose on it. And
Really?
yes, and it debuted at #1 on Amazon right after the Dateline
Wow. What's the
piece were
name of it?
made. It's called, well, I'm going to tell you the name. You might have to kill me afterwards, or I might have to kill you. Let's see. It's called The Surrendered Wife, which I
Ooh.
know people get really, they imagine I mean obedient wife, or they think that I mean subservient wife or something like that. But I was in my own little world when I named it. It's surrendering is just what you have to do every day, right? You
Sure.
might not want to be stuck in traffic, and you can't make it move. So you could use it to talk on the phone, or listen to an audiobook or music that you love. That's surrender. And a surrendered wife just knows that she can't tell her husband how to drive, or what to do at work, or what to eat for lunch. And she instead focuses on her own happiness. And that in turn improves the intimacy.
Yeah, great. So as I'm listening to you, there's a couple of things that popped into I do have a Fix Your Marriage in 40 Days course. We're revamping it, putting it back on my website. One of the things that I have learned that I was doing for 25 years plus, because we'll be married 26 years this year, is that I was emasculating him. You know, I was mothering, because as women, we can see the things that need to be done.
That's
Whereas
right.
a man can really just focus in on whatever's in front of him. We're seeing the whole picture. And I remember we were sitting in this marriage retreat, and all of the women were talking very openly. The husbands, we were all there, and they were saying, look, the way that you drive is literally like, I'm petrified, because we see the ways our brains are wired. We see everything coming at us. So while they're weaving and dodging and everything, we literally think that, we're going to get hit 1,000 times in that process. So, liken that analogy to, in the home, let's just say everything's coming at us. We see everything that needs to be done.
Yes.
We have the bird's eye view, if you will, of the things that are incomplete. And it doesn't bother them like it does us. They can take that and put it away or to the side. So somehow I was of the opinion that I was doing the right thing by always directing him to those things that need to be done. So as I'm listening to you, and you're talking about your friend that was like, can you tell my cousin in Florida this thing? And so resting into that, I had to be like, wow, I've certainly got enough kids. I want a partner.
Yes.
And I still have to be super conscious about what I notice, because noticing is a feminine art. And not feeling compelled to have this whole thing, this whole perfection order thing going. So anyway, I'm curious how you got your husbands to do these things, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
without the old way of mothering or
Yeah.
emasculating. Yeah.
Well, it does seem like kind of a miracle when I look back on it now, because I could not get my husband to, and so much is in the approach, right? So what I used to do was say, and felt responsible for everything because he was doing nothing as far as I was concerned.
Right.
So I would say things like, "Gosh, this kitchen is a disaster," and I thought he was going to like jump off the couch and like start cleaning the kitchen. Well, let me just tell you, that never happened. That never happened. And then finally, I kind of started to realize, like, I don't think he can even hear me. Like I would say, "John, this kitchen is a disaster." And he would just hear John, wah, 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 like Peanuts parents or something. And so, and I thought I was telling him what I wanted, but I really wasn't. I was only complaining. And I don't even think men can hear us when we're complaining. Maybe no one can hear us when we're complaining, right? So,
well, your kids certainly tune you out, and
they
after a while, your husband,
right? And even your girlfriends after a while, like,
Yeah.
okay, we get it, right? So what I learned that I still just treasure that to this day is how to trigger his hero gene. Because I've asked thousands of men, I'll say, "How important is it to you that your wife is happy?" And Cherie, they all say the same thing. They say, "Oh, it's everything," or "It's the most important thing. It's massive." In the United Kingdom, they say it's imperative. So thousands of men, they all say the same thing. And I thought, well, my husband doesn't care about my happiness. Like he doesn't, I mean, I can't get him to do anything to make me happy. But it wasn't until I learned how to express my desires in a way that inspires that I found that hero gene, and I was able to trigger it like crazy. So I'll give you an example. So finally I learned to say, it's the final outcome. I'll give you the formula, but I said, "I would love a clean kitchen." Right. And so he goes, "Okay, I'll clean it." And that was like 20 years ago. And he's been cleaning it ever since.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's even evolved and at first I was like, okay, yeah, he kind of cleaned it, but what about the counters, But now, I mean, the man like cleans the sink every single day and the counters. And so
Because you asked.
Because I expressed my desire. And so
That's different than just a regular ask.
It's really different than saying, "Would you clean the kitchen?" He saw the opportunity to make me happy. And then once he clean, and I do give him all kinds of gratitude for it too. I'm like, "This makes me so happy. Look at this sink. It's so beautiful. It's so clean." Right.
So you expressed your embodied feeling, how it felt in your body, or how you received that, how you felt when you received that.
That's right. How I felt when I received it. Exactly. Like this makes me so happy. So he sees that it's possible to make me happy, and he sees how to do it. And that man is like jumping up with a smile to do it. And this is what we see. I've seen thousands of case studies now, right, over the last 20 years of helping empower women to fix their relationships without their man's conscious effort. And so it's just so interesting. So anytime and so recently I had wanted a pool. I've been saying for a long time, I've been saying, I want a pool, but I didn't really own that desire. I don't know how to explain that, except that I was like, well, I want a pool, but really inside I was like, that's a little too indulgent. I think it's like, that's kind of expensive. We'll have to have we'll have to maintain it, whatever. And then I finally got to the point where it's like, no, I just really want it. And I was like, I would love a pool. And he's like, okay. And like, we got a contractor and he's getting permits right now. We're going to get a pool. So the guy is like, as soon as he sees, he's like, oh, okay. Now what can we do?
What I have learned about the masculine is that their number one thing is they want you to make you happy. They want you to be happy. That's like the biggest turn on, to see you in your joy. Yeah. And it's so interesting because we feel like we have to display a certain persona of unsatisfaction in order to get things done.
Exactly. Who taught us that?
I don't know. It's the martyr. It's the female martyr syndrome or something.
Right?
Like it's the passive aggressive, like banging the pots and pans in the kitchen instead of coming out and saying what you actually.
I would love a clean kitchen, right? Or I would love to go to bed early tonight, or I would love a hot bath. Your shift, right?
No, that's similar to starting out with "I would love."
That's part of the formula, right? You start out with "I would love," and then you want to focus on that final outcome. So like you might say, "I would love a clean kitchen." Well, he might corral the kids to clean it. right? It's not, I would love you to clean the kitchen. I just want the outcome of a clean kitchen. So it's interesting because a lot, and then what women immediately hear, because so you don't think that your husband cares about your happiness when you're struggling, because he's feeling like, I know for me, I was so controlling, right? And he was emasculated, kind of like you were
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
And so he has to protect that first. If your husband doesn't feel respected, if he feels like you're his mother, right? He's not, that is going to come before his desire to make you happy. But once he feels respected, then things change, right? So that's like the next piece that you kind of have to clean up that respect piece. But once that's done, you could say, I would love, and then just the final outcome. And you don't want to use it for affection. You don't want to say like, I would love, or attention either, because first of all, that doesn't feel good. I used to stand with my arms on my hips and say, the average couple has sex 2.5 times per week, and we haven't done it in like 3 weeks. So I think we should do it. Right.
What's
And I
the
thought he was going to
half? Like 2.5
yeah, yeah. They have it 2.5 times a week.
on
So
average. Okay.
on average. Yeah, on average. So I
Okay.
was like, okay, I thought he was going to jump off the couch like men need sex, right? So I thought he was just like, oh, yeah, okay,
Like you
let's
take the
do it.
hint of like, yeah.
Right. No, that never worked. I was like, there's something wrong with him, because he's not interested. I couldn't even get him to want to make love to me. He was not interested. And it was because when I was showing up as his mother, which I was, well, men are not sexually attracted to their mothers. And
Yeah.
women are not really sexually attracted to their sons either. So if you're seeing him as another
Huge
kid,
buzzkill for
it's
a
a
man.
huge buzzkill,
You're
right?
mothering, just so heads up. Like,
Yeah.
interesting.
So expressing your desires in a way that inspires is not the skill you want to use, because I want him to make love to me because he finds me so desirable and irresistible. I'm an irresistible magnet to him. He cannot keep his hands off of me. And that's what we have now, versus me saying, I think we should have sex, and him being like, yeah,
Yeah.
no. Right. I'm watching a show. I'm watching a
Yeah.
rerun.
So I remember when I was getting my degree in college, and I read the study that it was I got a minor degree in sociology, but it was the study of what attracts men to women. It wasn't the other way around, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But the number one, I guess you could say, attraction factor for a man being attracted to a woman was confidence. And so a lot of the discussion we had in our focus group was around, and because we're all in college, right? We're all dating and all this, is it's kind of the hard to get thing in a healthy way. So it's like most happy spouses or men that were in stable relationships reported that the reason that they found their partner, their girlfriend or wife, so attractive was because she didn't need them. She didn't need them to have sex. She didn't need them to complete her. There was not this trace of codependent neediness. And it wasn't that she was emasculating either.
No.
Because there was that dependence on their strength, but it wasn't unhealthy. It was like, and it wasn't even she can kill her own snakes. It was, she knows who she is. She's confident and alive in herself. She's running her own life. She doesn't need me to make that better for her. She's confident.
Right.
So I locked that in, because that was like 1995. And it was before I got married. And I always remember this, like, okay, what is that confidence factor? So
like, how do you get that?
Yeah, like I don't want to be this like needy, clingy. There's that. Then there's the mother that you're talking about, this mother, and then there's an emasculating, right? So that those three dark shadows of the feminine can really come out if we're not aligned with ourselves.
So true. And I think I'd even collapse maybe this mother and the emasculator. For me, those were pretty much the same. And, a big breakthrough for me, this is the one valuable thing I got from counseling, which is, I remember we're there and she said, I don't know if you realize, you're kind of controlling. I was like,
Mm.
what? Like the record's like, woo, woo. Like, no, we're here to fix him, like, and what are you talking about? And it really turned out to be true that I was controlling. And I remember thinking like, okay, I'm controlling. Okay, now what do I do about this? And my counselor was like, yeah, just stop being so controlling. And that was no help at all. It's kind of almost like the confidence study, like just be confident. Like, okay, like,
What?
yeah, how do I wait? Is there a vitamin I take? Is there, how do I do this? And I think one of the things that I kind of had to give up. So, and I'd also been raised to be, I mean, I feel like this is everyone's story now, but like just really independent, like get your education. You don't want to have to depend on a man. And I just feel like that is not really my goal anymore. Like I do like a man to kill the spiders and the snakes or carry the
Yeah.
heavy, right? Or, the heavy suitcase. And I love feeling taken care of. And I just consider that part of my birthright as a woman. I think of our bodies as like a kind of a metaphor that we're built to receive,
Sure.
and that receiving is the essence of femininity. And a comparative religious study student was telling me one time that with yin and yang, the like if you take every object has yin and yang. So if you take a coffee cup, the ceramic part is the yang, like the masculine part. It gives it structure. But the yin is the part that can receive the coffee. And if you think about not having the yin, you've got a coffee cup that can't receive coffee.
Mm.
It has no purpose. There's no purpose. So I think this whole receiving concept is fascinating, because if you're not willing to receive from, when I wasn't really willing to receive from my husband, like I wouldn't even let him clean the kitchen sometimes because he didn't load the dishwasher right, or I'd redo it or something, right? And so it was like poor receiving. Then my husband had no purpose and he felt like he couldn't succeed. So I've just found that receptivity is like a whole other skill.
Totally. Yeah.
And my mom didn't know. She was terrible at it. Poor thing, right? And she's divorced. Okay. So it was
It's
just
like a
very
huge skill with feminine essence and feminine energy. Something came to mind when you were talking about letting them lead badly. Maybe it's our judgment that it is bad to begin with, but let them do it and allow, because for me, receiving is also about allowing and opening. So you talked about the feminine anatomy and the way that our physiology is. We are receiving the instruments. And
yes.
also we have that masculine in us as well. I mean, for me, I've had to really temper that a little bit because I have a strong side of fixing and saving and creating structures and manifesting, and that's good at the expense also of like taking over. Like you were talking about being called out on being controlling.
Yeah.
It's like I don't always have to move to action. I don't always have to, if I get an intuitive hit on something, I don't always have to move in and do something about it.
That's right.
And
That's
that can
right.
be a compulsion.
It definitely was for me. And it was really a very hard habit to break. And here's the part that I thought was fascinating, painful, challenging. And that is that all control is actually based in fear. If I'm not afraid, I'm going to have to pay more or wait longer, or work harder, or be lonely, right? Then I don't have to try to control. So,
That makes sense.
if you're not afraid he's going to buy an impractical car, you don't have to say, hey, the four of us are not going to fit in the sports coupe or whatever, right? Like it's all about control. And you're like, I'm just telling him something. No, I'm afraid and I'm acting on that fear. And that's just never attractive. In fact, that contributes to that neediness you were talking about, right? That complaint, the criticism, that's what makes it needy, right? So if I'm just expressing a pure desire, like I would love Mexican food for dinner, like, oh, I want to sit in a booth, right? That's just pure desire. That's giving him the opportunity to be my hero. But if I'm saying like, we never have Mexican food, we always have to sit at the table, right? Now I'm just like, now what do you do with me? I'm just a complaining, unhappy person, unhappy shrew, which is kind of where I used to live. I'm sad to say.
Well, no, it's all learning. I mean,
yeah,
as you said, this was not modeled,
no.
and bless our parents' hearts, and grandparents and their parents. It's like there was such a split in the there was a psychic rift in the consciousness on masculine and feminine roles. It's been patriarchal dominance. It's been misogyny. It's also been feminine manipulation and that dark shadow of that coming out. So we're kind of just reeling right now. I mean, we know it's going to get integrated. We can see the world kind of spinning and on its axis of like, whoa, you know, trying to calibrate this, hold it. For me, I always looked out here for him to get it.
Yes.
And if he could only see, if he could only pick this up, whatever. And the deep work that Jeff and I are now engaged in, and the people holding space for us to do this are like, hey, 90% of couples don't go to this level of like deep, deep, radical self-accountability. I'm going to throw this out there and maybe we can talk about it a little bit. But he said to us, after 13 hours of just deep inner work and inner child stuff with both Jeff and I, and it was like an intensive day with this beautiful male facilitator. And he said, after like 10 or 11 hours of us just like coming back and forth and trying to get to the heart of things, he's like, look, do you not want to know the moment a relationship heals? It's when one person holds their hand up and says, it's me. I'm the problem. And they just own, no matter what, you know, because you just keep projecting and blaming and you just never. So the moment somebody is like, it's me. And I don't know why, but I thought of that when you told me the title of your book, The Surrendered Wife.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we just have to surrender being right.
Yeah, completely.
So anyway, I just wanted to add that because, you know, when you get into that deep work, it's never about them. It's always, they're triggering something that's unhealed in you.
Absolutely.
It's right here in your face.
Absolutely. And I love that because, and I didn't at first, you know, I had the same illusion as you, like if only he would change, then, you know, that was the illusion that he needed to change for me to be happy. And of course that's not true, but it really seemed like it. And when he didn't change and I still was married to him, I was forced through this door called self-reflection, self-development, accountability. And I'll forever be grateful that I was, because I went on the best self-improvement journey of my life. And I started to see my marriage as a mirror where I could look in the mirror and see how I was showing up based on the reflection I was getting back. And slowly, little by little, not only did I get the kind of marriage I dreamed of when I said I do, where he would, you know, just be passing me in the hall and pull me in at the waist for a kiss, or, you know, or just be trying to make me laugh and just, you know, thinking about ways to make me happy. But I also became the best version of myself that I could, because I had to, right? Like when,
Yeah,
you know, when he got irritated, I was like, oh, wait, what did I learned, like, what did I just, oh, was that disrespectful? We were out to dinner one time and he was talking about his work, his business. And I asked a question, and in the question was this subtext of like, you know, there was a criticism about the way he was giving this one client priority. And I didn't think he should be, right? So I had some control in it. And we're at it. It's like Saturday night, this restaurant's hopping, there's music, there's waiters flying by, you know, everyone's having a good time. And I asked this question, all of a sudden, I swear the music stops. My husband gets this look on his face, like, what, you know, and everybody's quiet. And then I go, oh, I go, was that disrespectful? Like, I'm still not accountable yet, right? I'm like, was that disrespectful? And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, I apologize for being disrespectful when I criticized your client. And like the music came back, the waiters start flying around again. Like he's like, our good night is salvaged. Like, we're having this nice dinner. I could have ruined it, right? By asking this, you know, like throwing a criticism in. I was trying to do it like subtly, but it wasn't that subtle. My husband's on to me. Our husbands know. Husbands always know, right? And so it's a good. So I mean, that was one of the early pieces of advice I got about respect, was like apologizing for being disrespectful when you're not. And I was like, you're crazy. Like I'm not got anything else. I'm not going to do that. But
it's
really
hard. It's
It feels
really
like
hard. It can be
sandpaper
really
in your
hard to
mouth.
be
Yeah.
like in a space of like humbling yourself to apologize when you really feel justified. You feel
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm right. I'm right on this. So, and my opinion counts. I'm smart. So I'm not going to just suck up to you like Edith Bunker. Forget it. Right. So,
Oh, I
yeah.
was raised on, yeah, don't even get me started on Archie Bunker and Edith, because
Right.
that was held up to us like in our culture, but
Yeah.
like, hey, go get me this, go get me that. Okay,
Right. And we all felt sorry for Edith. Like, oh my gosh, she's such a victim. Yeah.
So
So
I want to dive into, what do you feel in the marriage counseling marriage? And we don't mean to disrespect anyone in the field who's a
no,
marriage therapist or
they meant
counselor.
well.
There's
They meant
great
well.
ones out there. I'm acquainted with
There are.
several. What
There's
can be
can't
damaging
find
about
them.
it? What
Well, I really think a big part of it, I mean, now that I know it really makes a marriage great,
Mhm.
there just is so much conventional wisdom out there that is, in fact, on my podcast, I give out the worst relationship advice of the week award every single week for, over a year now, because there's so much. But I think one of the main things is what you just pointed to, Cherie, which is that the healing starts when you say, oh, it's me. What's on my side of the street? What's on my paper? How did I show up? Yeah, he's 90% of the problem here, but what was my 10% that I can maybe clean up? And the problem with couples counseling is a lot of times you are going to, I mean, the first thing you do is tell the counselor in front of your husband, like everything he's doing wrong, usually, right? Which is incredibly disrespectful. And respect is like oxygen for men. So you're actually digging your hole deeper right there.
Mhm.
And then we're going to spend the time focusing on what is wrong, everything that's wrong with the relationship. Well, what you focus on increases. So of course you're going to have a fight on the way home because you just talked about
They
everything.
just opened it up.
Yeah, just
Pandora's
open it,
box just,
right? I mean,
then
if
you're
the
left
marriage
raw
counselor,
and you have to go home and sort. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. If the marriage counseling was all about like, hey, I want each of you to list 22 things you're grateful for about your spouse, right? That could be really valuable. Or I want you to make a list of all the ways that you're making yourself happy. Right? Like that would be a big one. It's funny because that's like the first indispensable step, we call it on our campus, to fixing your marriage, to making your marriage playful and passionate, is I want you to make a list of 20 things that make you happy. And a lot of women are kind of stopped. They're like, well, I don't know, I take care of the kids. It's like, yeah, no, that's not about you. That's about the kids. And so it's like whether it's playing guitar, getting out your kayak, or just music that you love, or just even just giving yourself some lotion before bed. It can be simple things. But if you don't do at least 3 things a day for your own happiness, you give your relationship very little chance to be happy because, and this was profound for me at first, was only happy people have happy relationships. It's like, oh,
That makes
I
so
mean,
much sense.
right. That's amazing. Right. It was such
Yeah.
an aha. It was such a like, oh, epiphanies always sound kind of silly when you say them later, I think. But I was like, oh,
They're
wait, I
usually
have to
so
be
simple too. Like,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
so what you mentioned, that respect is the oxygen for men. I have found that to be true. I have 3 brothers. I have 3 sons. I've been married almost 26 years, and so what is the aphrodisiac for women?
Oh, I don't know.
We're
I guess,
we're
well,
not that complicated. Like,
yeah, we're not. We're not.
I
Yeah.
I have my own thing that makes me I like to feel heard.
Yes, of
I like to
course.
not just listen to, but heard.
Yes.
Like right in front of me, like validating my feelings. And, even if I'm like, because it really diffuses. And for whatever reason, that makes me feel an intimate connection because they
Sure.
are seeing and hearing me. That's my aphrodisiac. And a lot of other women that I talk to is feeling heard.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, this was kind of another aspect that I was really surprised to learn. And I totally get that. It's about creating intimacy, feeling heard. But the thing that a lot of them said that I was like, what? Was that they also needed close friendships with women to have happy marriages.
I can see
And it
that.
was really about, like, I know to this day, it takes, like, if I'm having a bad day, it might take like, 3 best friends and 2 sisters and my husband, right, to put me right. Like one mere mortal man You're not gonna be able to do it all.
Yeah,
It's
so good.
too
Like,
much.
see, we do that. We want them to react like a girlfriend, and they're
Yeah,
just not.
they're just
Like, it's
not.
just
No.
no.
And it's so funny because I've read studies where they say like women use, I don't know, an extra 50,000 words a day above men or something, whatever it was. I forget the number, but it's like at 6 o'clock at night, all over the world, the same thing is happening. Like the men are like, I'm done. My words
Yeah.
are out. And the women are like, yeah, but I still have so many words in me. And so if without the girlfriends, like there's just undue burden, there's undue pressure
Yeah,
on
it
him
just
and kind of
diffuses all this pent
unrealistic.
up energy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it takes a village to have a happy
Oh,
marriage.
I love that. So, okay, cool. What do you teach about a spouse fulfilling prophecy? What is that?
Yes. The change your husband skill, I call it. So it's pretty magical. I learned about it from Lee Miltier, who was on a Nightingale Conant tape that I had when I was, I don't know, like when I was like maybe a teenager even. And she teaches a course on autosuggestion, which is you saying like, I ran a marathon or I started a successful business, or just saying to yourself, whatever it is you want to be. And so this woman came to Lee's course and she left and she realized, you know what, I've been auto-suggesting stuff to my husband that I really don't, it's not what I wanted. It was like unwitting spouse fulfilling prophecy, I call them now. And her spouse fulfilling prophecy was, you always lose your temper. So she decided she was going to change it up. So she went home, waited for her husband to lose his temper, and she didn't have to wait very long. And he did. And then instead of saying, that's just like you always lose your temper, she said, that's not like you to lose your temper. And he just looked at her funny, like, what? But he didn't argue with her. But their 12-year-old son said, yes, it is, Mom. He always loses his temper, right? Because what had he been listening to? But the mom's affirmation of him. So, but she decided she was just gonna, like, she had nothing to lose. She's just like, I'm just going to stick with this strategy. Let's just see what happens. So she kept saying, that's not like you to lose your temper. And not too long after that, they were at a restaurant and the service was slow. So the husband started fuming. He's like, I have a mind to call the manager over here and let him know how long we've been waiting, because it's been a long time. And then he stopped himself and he goes, it's not like me to lose my temper, is it? And she just about fell out of the chair because it didn't take very long. Like, people rise to our expectations.
Sure.
And you can reflect back the thing that you want to see, and then you can find evidence for it. So I heard this, and one of my big complaints was my husband didn't make enough money. And what he heard was, I would say, why don't you get a raise? Why don't you ask for a raise? Or why don't you get a better job? And he heard, you don't make enough money. So that was my unwitting spouse fulfilling prophecy. So I thought, well, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to start saying, you've always been a good provider. And just for fun, I started calling him Mr. Moneybags. And do you know, around that time, my husband started his own business. He'd never had his own business before, but he started one, and it was like the more successful than he'd ever been at his jobs. And it was his own thing. And it was right in his wheelhouse, and he just loved it. And so it was very easy for me to find evidence. He'd get checks in the mail and I'd be like, oh, look, Mr. Moneybags has got a big check. To this day, I still call him Mr. Moneybags. It felt true after not that long that this was the reality, even though it felt like a stretch to say it when I first started.
Oh, yeah.
So what
That's
you focus
great.
on increases. And it's like a gratitude skill. It's really a way of counting your blessings, right? Nobody's either all black or all white. Everybody's shades of gray. So you get to pick what you're going to focus on. If you're saying he's always this, why not? That's not true, right? It can't be true. How about if you say, yeah, he's sometimes that, which means, you can focus on that.
I guess, that would lend itself, parenting that works well, people you work with. I can see that being a really powerful practice in general. The hardest person for us to compliment is usually the person closest to us, because like you said, they're holding that mirror up and exposing, and we're trying, so what Jeff and I have come to is our goal now is to just keep taking off the masks, and I have heard it said that the reason that relationships are so close, intimate relationships can be so powerful is it's really the only way. That person is the only one to really hold up the mirror for you. Most all of your other exchanges, you can wear a mask and you can have a level of connection. But if you really want true intimacy, which is into me, see, right? You probably have already heard that. Into me, I see. It is to dig deep and just keep taking that mask off and setting it to the side so that you have the space to be each other.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That's very hard to do.
It requires a great deal of courage, doesn't it?
Mm.
And I think that was like the primary thing I was missing early on is it's so interesting because I call it being on his paper, right? All on his side of the street, like all about what he was doing, how he should get a raise, how he should clean up more, how he should be more romantic. And meanwhile, my life was kind of going by like a car with no one at the wheel, kind of feigning an injury so it could get some attention over here, right? Like there's
Yeah.
nobody paying attention. And isn't it interesting that when I finally did learn the skills, it's just skills like driving a car, to relinquish control of the inappropriate things I was trying to control about my husband, my life emerged. I got to write a New York Times bestselling book. I started a international coaching practice. I got to go on national TV, like Today's Show and Good Morning America. And it was all terrifying. It was so scary. And I realized like, I didn't want to do that scary stuff. I was hiding out. And the way I was hiding out was being about pointing the finger at my husband. And when I stopped doing that and got brave enough to show up for my life,
that's when everything just aligned.
And it's been amazing.
Wow. Well, this has been really enlightening for me. And it really informs my own, like, you know, how I see, how we see life is how we see ourselves. How we see our partner is how we're actually seeing ourselves. It's always about the relationship to self.
It is.
And so is there just maybe a tip or something you can leave with the ladies to have that deep self-reflection or accountability so that we're not always projecting and blaming, but that we're actually coming home here and looking inside?
So I love that invitation. Thank you so much, Sheree, because one of my favorite things about being a woman and having feminine power, feminine, like emotional brilliance, is recognizing that desire is the seat of feminine power. Desire. So when I know what I want and when I'm willing to honor it and not be like, oh, maybe somebody else wants it, right? Or, maybe I'm taking too much. If I'm willing to say, I would love this. And how do I get into my desires? I could take a complaint, which is just a lazy desire, and I can flip it upside down, right? So like, this kitchen is a disaster is the complaint, right? The desires, I would love a beautiful kitchen, a clean kitchen. I remember one woman she said, well, I also want my husband to make more money. And it's like, money's a means to an end, right? So it's like, well, what would you have if he made more money? And she's like, then I could buy myself things. And then things is still kind of vague, right? There's still no desire there. And I said, well, what kinds of things could you buy? And she goes, well, I need new boots. And so her desire was, I would love new boots, right? That's it. She just would love new boots. So if you can take your complaints, flip them upside down, create those desires, and then honor them, write them down on a piece of paper, say them out loud, say them to yourself, say them to your husband. I remember deciding I wanted to have my own TV show because I'm so passionate now about getting every woman the 6 intimacy skills so she doesn't have to suffer like I did in my marriage without just knowing, not having the right information. So I said, I would love to have a TV show. And I thought that was pretty terrifying too. And then that morning I was having an event and my coaches were there and I said, you guys, I just want to let you know, I would love to have my own TV show. I'm kind of nervous, but I'm excited and I'd like to do it. Do you know that night, an Emmy-winning producer came to the event. And afterwards, she stayed late and she said, have you ever thought about having your own TV show? And within a few months, I had a series on Amazon Prime just from honoring that desire. So it's really just incredible how much power we have. Women can move mountains without moving a muscle if we honor our desires.
And that's that beautiful, powerful feminine energy that invites in. And I love that. Desire is the seat of feminine power.
That's right.
I have done episodes just coming back into honoring the desires of our hearts, honoring our sexual desires, honoring our longings, our dreams, our whatever is there that we're not seeing. We're not putting the microscope or the flashlight or the magnifying glass on those desires. So that is a perfect place for us to to kind of wrap this up, to circle it back, where can people find you, Laura, online?
Well, I have something kind of fun going on right now. It's totally free. They can go and get the Adored Wife Roadmap, which just kind of lays out the 6 steps. It also talks about the 3 mistakes that everybody seems to be making when they're trying to get their husband's time or attention or affection. And you can download that for free at lauradoyle.org.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time, Laura. This was super enlightening.
It's been really fun. Thanks for having me, Sheree.